Today you will see a magical battle with secret villains. You will be a guest at the wedding of the demon lord and the chief merchant, who by cunning maneuvers, wants to get her for himself. Whether our hero Cizio will make it in time and stop the event, we'll find out right now. The lifelong story of the demon lord is very interesting and intense. It's filled with struggle and war. For as long as she can remember, she's always just been fighting. But one day she met in battle with Setsu, who turned out to be the first enemy to offer a truce. And she agreed to end the war. Soon Setsu disappeared, no one knew where he was. But Desart longed to see him again. If that wasn't possible after all, she would at least keep her promise of a truce. 5 years after the war, life began to get better. Demon Land and humans had built a trade route and got along just fine. One day, something went wrong. The brooch the Lord gave to Setsu suddenly cracked. A bad omen or just a coincidence? Well, it could be repaired, as long as there was peace and quiet around. During a terrible storm, a knight ran into the castle and reported terrible news. Men had rushed into the demon lands and started a battle. Was all the peace that had lasted 5 years just an illusion? The Lord ordered to gather all the generals and prepare the army. You can't just sit there, you have to defend your land, no matter what it takes. But you can't make the war worse. She promised Cizio she would keep the peace. All this sowed a wave of anxiety among her subordinates. They stopped trusting people and hated them again. Who the Lord will marry? Ignore is the sneaky tyrann. Like and subscribe, brave Setsu. Once again they would have to go to the battlefield and there was no telling if they would all come back alive. That's terrible. Vlad has reported that the chief merchant of all the lands demands an audience with the Lord. He cannot be refused, we will have to accept it. His proposal shocked everyone in the room. He offered to marry the Lord. Tyrann promised to end the war once and for all, thanks to his influence and wealth. The offer is a risky one. But it was the only way out of the situation. The Lord understood where this would lead. Tyrann would simply enslave her with a spell. She needed to think very hard in solitude. After much deliberation, the Lord made her decision. She would accept Tyrann's offer. Despite the entreaties of Vlad and the rest of her subordinates, she was not a criminal. Tyrann is clearly working for someone. Someone more powerful. Someone who wants to take over all the lands. This is a very dangerous man. Or maybe he's not a man at all, we don't know that. Because Tyrann communicates with him, through an intermediary wrapped in a mantle. Normally a wedding is a joyous celebration, but not this time. Right now, it's like a wake. Everyone was sad and unhappy, except, of course, Tyrann. He was probably the only one smiling at the event. This wasn't how the Lord imagined her main day in life. She was beautiful in that white dress, but she was still better in black. And so the marriage ceremony began. The newlyweds exchanged vows and Tyrann put the cursed necklace on the Lord. Almost put it on. But then he burst into the temple Cizio. He came back. He didn't leave the princess in the lurch. Just in time. Tyrann was frightened out of his wits. And rightly so. His subordinates rushed at the boys, but Levi stepped forward to confront them. Suddenly a guy in a cloak appeared in the air and paralyzed Levi with a magical shot of shadow. They would have died that way, but then Cizio burst in and threw him back. A fight ensued between them. Both used their strongest moves. They attacked each other over and over again. The villain could not have imagined that Cizio would be so strong. His magic couldn't even hurt him. Toma's entire ingenious plan was ruined by the hero's appearance. Since no one was expecting the hero's arrival, the villain had to leave to inform the Lord. At last the Lord met Cizio. She had waited so long for him. Beneath the cloaks of the villain's intermediaries were the magical soldiers, who disappeared in an instant. Now Cizio is convinced that Toma is to blame for everything. We must set out again. We cannot stand in one place for long. Ruri ran to the castle and finally met the keeper for whom she had come all this way. With all pride she handed her a parcel from her grandfather, through Cicio's hands. Inside was the same broken brooch, But now it was as good as new. It was all thanks to Grandpa Ruri's magic hands. And now, years later, Caesio had once again shown the Lord what it meant to live.